Does football need to man up? Scott Brown, the skipper of Celtic, has said that there's too much whinging when it comes to the rough and tumble of football. Boys, we're at this point now where people wanting more protection for those better players, but has it gone too far, Robbie?
You know what? It's a hard one. I mean, first of all, Scott Brown's not a good example of it. He's a bit of a clogger sometimes. So, and I don't like too much of that in football, where you've got guys just taking out the skillful players. I don't like that. But I do kind of understand what he's saying, because...
But that goes against exactly what he's actually saying, is that tackles are part of the game. Yeah. Hard tackles are part of the game, and it should be something that is...
hard but fair tackling is a part of the game, and I love to see that, and I want that to stay in the game. But I don't, you don't want unfair tackles where players back in the day, they used to leave one on a player. You know what I mean? I don't want to see the return of that. But certainly when you watch like things like the El Clasico the other day, I call it El Divio, because players dive in. I mean, even when Arsenal played Barcelona the other day, you only had to breathe on a Barcelona player and he was rolling around on the floor. And I hate to see that. And I think that's where he's coming from with that. And yeah, I really want to see that coming out of the game. There's just too much of it nowadays.
Would you agree? Or do you think it's gone too far in terms of...
I think it's gone too far. It's not fair on the defenders, because defenders are great defenders, because sometimes they make amazing tackles. And if you make it a non-contact sport and you take tackling out, they're kind of dormant in a way, aren't they? It's like saying to a goal scorer, you can't shoot unless you're in the box. And I think back in the days of, maybe Vinnie Jones and people like that, where it was a little bit over the top, football has evolved. And I think people's physicality has evolved as well. People are, they have low % body fat now, footballers. They're very agile, they're tiny, have very little fat on them, they're very quick. It's a very different game because of that. And back in the day, it was a lot slower. And so I think that's inevitably going to happen. But I think it's got a real problem, and it's had a problem for a long time. Football is a contact sport, and they've got to keep.
Well, there's two words I think that a lot of people sort of say now. The words contact and interceptions is another one. I think some people feel like the tackle is dead. It's all about the only way that you can get the ball off someone is through an interception. That's a sad thing, don't you think?
Yeah, and then what you're saying about contact, I mean, like this latest and. The commentators nowadays all seem to be backing it up, like a little bit of contact in the box. How many games have we seen that this season where there's been the slightest of contact on a player in the box and he falls over or goes rolling around, and that's given as a penalty?
And the commentator, people, there's this phrase, isn't there? There was contact.
Yeah, and you're right. It's unfair on the defenders, because if that contact as well is outside the box, it's just played on.
Some great defenders make amazing tackles. And that's part of their game, isn't it? It's part of their game, and if they're not allowed to do that, then what is the point of them being a defender? So they've got to do something about it. It's just not fair.
I think the other side of it also is attacking players looking for contact, and the sort of simulation that provokes, I guess, in a lot of players.
I mean, last night Torres was sent off, and that was obviously the reason that the game switched. Now, as soon as that happened, all the Atletico Madrid players, and Costa was guilty of this when he was at Atletico Madrid, all of them would try to get one of the Barcelona players sent off, and that is wrong. That is really wrong, and it spoiled the whole game. The whole game changed because of that. Barcelona upped their game in the second half, and they went on. They could have had 3 or 4, but because of that, it changed the whole game last night.
Football's about winning, though, isn't it? And so I think some people would say that if it gets you a foul or if it gets you something like that, then why does it matter? But as a wider issue, being football fans and people who love the game of football, does it lead us down a path where you lose the integrity of the game?
Yeah, exactly. You lose the integrity of the game. Listen, all of us want our team to win, but we also want a fair game, and that's what I want to see. I want to see a fair game. I mean, I used to love Robert Pires when he was at Arsenal, one of our greatest ever players, but I never used to like the fact that he'd go over very easily. And I kind of like the fact, it's very, I have mixed emotions sometimes on watching Arsenal, because I like the fact that the current team, they don't really go over easily. They play very fairly, but then sometimes it infuriates me because I see the opposition falling over very easily, and I have to say, Diego Costa at your club is a great exponent
but
of that.
Do you not think sometimes...
And I think it infuriates me sometimes. I say to myself, why aren't we doing it as well then?
Right.
But then we don't want to fall into that though, do we?
But do you not think the managers are to blame sometimes? Because if a manager went to you, mate, if I see you diving or you going over to get someone sent off, you ain't going to play for me for a long time. You know, or do you think the
think it's-
manager at half time or before the game goes, "Oi, son, you get a little nick in the penalty box, you just go down,"
course they
because
are.
they're going to
Of
do
course
it
they
to
are.
us.
Absolutely.
Do you see what I mean? It's tit for
Well,
tat.
just in general, wanting to win a game. Some people, it's about winning at all costs.
Of course
I
it
think
is.
you take it out of the manager's hands. I think you've got to make it even higher than that, where you punish people who are being dishonest.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And you help out the people who are being honest, because that is the problem. People who stay up in the penalty box when there's been contact don't get the penalty and it doesn't work out for them. So how do you move it forward? How do you make it better?
Unfortunately, only the Premiership games. You do get some of the other Football League games with highlights, but unfortunately, Premiership games have so many cameras on them and are analysed, so you can pick them apart. So you can't have one rule for the Premiership and one rule for all the other leagues, can you? So if you're going to say,
Yeah, but
right,
you've got to start somewhere as well.
Can you lead
You
by
do?
example?
Yeah, and I think retrospective punishment is a good idea. You know, I mean, you can go back and you can look at. For me, the biggest one for me is the diving. Like when they talk about, oh, there was the slightest bit of. If you go back and you look at that, and it was an obvious dive, that player receives some sort of ban,
definitely,
some sort of sanction.
yeah, totally agree.
Right, and I think if you brought that in, that would instantly start to cut out some of the cheating that goes on in the game. You know, another thing we were talking about the other day was, and I know this is quite controversial, but the use of like sin bins, right? So, like, say somebody did dive, right? You get sin bin for like 15 minutes. If it's a critical part of the game, that again might, make a player think
It
twice.
shouldn't have to
about
come down to
diving.
this. This is
Yeah.
not rugby. This is not American football. You know, this is football. It
But we
shouldn't
got
have-
to do
it's
something.
worked,
We
but
got to
it's
do
worked
something
in those
about it.
sports, so why not?
But
And-
they've had it for a long time now, and it has worked. And maybe you do need to change it in a way.
Do something.
I don't
Something's
know.
got to be done.
Well, listen,
Something's got to be done, Mark.
we don't work for the FA. We haven't got the answers, have we?
This is a tricky one. Let us know what you think, what can be done to make the game that we love a little bit more honest. If you enjoyed the video, give it a like, subscribe to Ball Street.